A 23-year-old walks into a windowless building in Virginia. No badge, no briefing, just fluorescent lights and a file with their name on it. This is where it begins. Not with gunfire, not with a car chase, not with a mission briefing in a glass tower overlooking the city, with observation, with silence, with the quiet understanding that the most powerful thing in the world is knowing what others don't. This is your life, through every level of a CIA agent. Not the movie version, the real one. Level 1. The recruit. You weren't recruited because you were the strongest, or the fastest, or the loudest person in the room. You were recruited because of what happened one afternoon in a university library. Everyone else was studying for exams. You were staring at a research report, a dry government paper on regional trade flows. And you noticed something no one else had caught, a set of numbers that didn't add up, a pattern buried 3 layers deep, a discrepancy so small it should have been invisible, but not to you. Your professor was watching from across the room. He'd been watching you for weeks. 3 months later, you're in Virginia. Fluorescent lights, no windows, no dramatic welcome, no speech. Just your first lesson, delivered quietly by a woman who looked like she'd seen everything. The best operations happen when nobody knows they happened. There were no gadgets, no chase scenes. What you learned was less cinematic and more powerful. How to observe a room without scanning it. How to read what someone means, not just what they say. How to stay completely calm when the air around you turns electric with tension. You learned that fear, when managed, becomes a compass. That misinformation spreads fastest through people who are certain they're right. That one overlooked detail can collapse years of careful construction. Your weapon wasn't strength, it was awareness. And awareness is power. Level 2. The field officer. Years pass. Training reshapes you in ways you can't fully explain to anyone outside of it. Languages, psychology, surveillance detection, crisis response. How to disappear into a crowd. How to make someone trust you in under 4 minutes. How to notice the person who's been following you since the metro station. Now you're in the field, not in classrooms, not in Virginia. You're in a market in Istanbul, a cafe in Beirut, a hotel lobby in Seoul. Somewhere loud and ordinary and alive. Which is exactly the point. The best cover isn't darkness, it's daylight. You meet a source, not in a back alley, but over coffee. The conversation sounds completely unremarkable to anyone nearby. Weather, local news, a mutual acquaintance's wedding, but underneath the words, an entire intelligence exchange is taking place. You scan reflections in windows without turning your head. You notice the man at the corner table who ordered nothing but has been there 40 minutes. You clock the shift in your source's breathing when you mention a specific name. You're not chasing villains, you're preventing escalation, stopping a misunderstanding before it becomes a confrontation, interrupting a dangerous plan before it reaches the execution stage, feeding the kind of intelligence that lets a policymaker choose diplomacy over force. Your job isn't to fight wars, it's to make them unnecessary, and slowly something settles into your bones. If you do your job perfectly, nothing dramatic happens. And that silence, that's what success sounds like. Level 3. The senior operative. You're no longer just executing plans. Now you're building them. And the weight of that is different than anything that came before. A file lands on your desk. An asset in Eastern Europe has flagged a credible threat. A financial network funneling resources to a destabilization campaign. The plan to disrupt it is clean, surgical, effective on paper. But the source feeding you this intelligence has a conflict of interest you've just uncovered. The team is ready. The window is closing. The clock is moving. Do you greenlight it? This is what senior operative work actually looks like. Not action, decision. You've watched alliances strain under the weight of bad intelligence. You've seen misinformation ignite a crisis in 72 hours. You know what happens when someone acts on a file they should have questioned. So you ask questions others are impatient to skip. What happens if this fails? Who is affected beyond the immediate objective? What are the second-order consequences? Political, ethical, human. You mentor younger officers now, sharp, driven, certain. They remind you of yourself. You give them the one thing training didn't: slow down. The chessboard is never just black and white. At night, you feel the quiet weight of decisions made and unmade, choices that prevented something terrible, and ones that could have caused something unintended. You begin to understand that intelligence work isn't about control, it's about managing uncertainty with wisdom. Level 4. Operations Director. The field is behind you now. You sit at a long table in an operations room. Screens glow across 3 walls. Maps, data streams, live updates from 6 continents. Teams are waiting for your word. You no longer carry out missions. You authorize them. That distinction matters more than most people understand. An operation lands in front of you. A chance to expose a foreign influence campaign running through 3 Western democracies. The intelligence is solid. The plan is tight. The team is ready. But you see something the team doesn't. If this surfaces in the wrong way, it doesn't just expose the campaign. It destabilizes a fragile diplomatic relationship that took 11 years to build. You close the folder. You send it back with 3 words: find another angle. The younger officers don't understand. They see a missed opportunity. You see a crisis averted. This is the lesson the field doesn't teach you. Restraint is often braver than action. You are accountable not just for success, but for the safety of officers, sources, and civilians who will never know your name. Power feels different here. Quieter, heavier, more deliberate. The real power isn't in pulling the trigger. It's in knowing when not to. Level 5. Senior Intelligence Leader. Decades pass. You're not in operations rooms anymore. You're in policy briefings, in front of decision-makers who hold enormous power and need someone to translate complexity into clarity. That someone is you. You've seen what happens when intelligence services operate without oversight. You've seen what happens when they're hamstrung by politics. You've learned, at cost, where both failures lead. So you advocate for something harder than strength: balance, security, without sacrificing liberty, protection, without abandoning ethics, strength, without recklessness. You build oversight mechanisms. You push for reform. You make the argument, again and again, that accountability isn't a weakness. Intelligence without accountability is just power with a good excuse. There are no public awards, no recognition ceremonies, no interviews, just the quiet evidence of a career well lived. Cities that never experienced the conflicts that almost happened, crises that dissolved before they made headlines, threats that were neutralized before anyone knew to be afraid. You think back to that 23-year-old in the library, the one who noticed a discrepancy no one else caught, the one who was recruited for a government internship and had no idea what was coming. That person changed the course of events again and again for decades. And almost nobody knows their name. That was always the point. So if you ever wonder what real power looks like, it doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't wait for applause. It operates in discipline, in patience, in careful decisions made under pressure, in quiet rooms, with no one watching. It looks like a young analyst noticing something in a library that no one else thought to look for. It looks like a field officer choosing restraint over reaction, a director closing a folder and sending it back, a leader building oversight systems that protect the work long after they're gone. And sometimes, The strongest shadows exist only to protect the light.